Hello and welcome to the Innovation Women Speak webinar series. My name is Bobby Carlton. I'm the founder of Innovation Women. Innovation Women is a visibility bureau for entrepreneurial, technical, and professional women. Our mission is to eliminate the all-male, all-pale, and often all-stale panels that you see so often at industry conferences and events. We connect women with speaking opportunities, and we connect event managers with awesome speakers who just happen to be women. Innovation Women is much more than a traditional speakers bureau. And event managers can search the database for free, and speakers pay just $100 a year to become a member. They get a profile on the platform and access to lists of speaking opportunities, as well as a number of other cool benefits. We recently rolled out new features on the platform. Speakers can now see how often their profile is visited. They can notify us to promote their speaking engagements, and event managers can easily create and store lists of speakers on the platform as they build out their events. And yes, that includes virtual events. If you'd like more information on Innovation Women, check out our website. For our webinar attendees, we always have a special offer just for you, 20% off your first year with us. It's like coffee money at that point. You probably spend more visiting Starbucks. Of course, back when we could visit Starbucks, right, and go inside, but I digress. Before we move on, let's look at what's coming up on our webinar schedule. This year, our webinar series has a new theme every month. September's theme is Women in Tech. All of our webinar speakers are Innovation Women members. If you're interested in applying to be one of our webinar speakers, we post the calls for speakers on our own platform. The deadline to apply for the next webinar is August 2nd. If you're already a member, keep an eye out for those opportunities on the site and in your weekly speaker newsletter. I'd also like to encourage everyone to register for our next webinar. On August 5th, Denise Castile will be presenting Reimagine, Refocus, and Reboot, Remaining Relevant During Rough Times. You'll learn 3 essential steps to reimagining your nonprofit or business, 3 areas your business could be focusing on or should be focusing on again, and 3 smart ways to reboot your business during a rough patch. You can register for this webinar in the Attachments tab. And speaking of that Attachments tab, this is an annotated version of your screen. Below the video viewing window, there are tabs. The default tab is Ask a Question. You can type in a question or a comment at any time during the program. The Attachments or Links tab is where you see documents and links from today's speaker, and of course that link to sign up for our next webinar. You can download the attachments at any time during this webinar and from the recording. The tab called Rate This helps us determine what you like, and we read all the feedback. The Polls or Vote tab is where you'll see polls from our speaker. She'll be asking you a question, and you can answer it right on the screen. You can enlarge your screen to view it in full screen mode, and if at any time you need help, audio help, or your screen is frozen, feel free to click on the Help button at the bottom of the screen. You may also want to try refreshing your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded, so if you'd like to view this webinar again, you will be able to. We will send you the link after the webinar. And now on to today's presentation. Today with us is Amy DeLuise. Amy is an experienced event speaker, workshop leader, and facilitator who has spoken all across the U.S., Europe, and Asia. And Amy, I'm going to let you do more introducing of yourself because you and I go way, way back. And for those listening, again, remember, you can ask a question at any time. And this webinar is being recorded for future playback at your convenience. Amy, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Bobby. It's just absolutely great to be with you, even if virtually. And I'm very excited to chat with all the folks in the audience. So as Bobby said, we do have a poll in there, and you can actually answer that poll anytime. It'll just help me understand what your biggest challenge is. So you can go ahead and get going on that anytime you want. I also have a copy of the slide deck for you on my web link that you can see here on this slide, but you can also find it in the Attachments and Links tab to the right of the screen on your screen. So feel free to download that if you want to page through things, especially because I'll have some hot links to various organizations and tools and tips that I suggest, and so those will be ready for you. So one of the things I wanted to mention is just my background as a producer director of video content, but really also a multi-platform producer. And that's really what we've all become as business owners. So I've run my company for more than 20 years, and I direct videos, but I also help organizations strategize with their entire brand content strategy. I've written several books that are targeted at people who produce content, video and other content. I have courses on LinkedIn Learning, and I think the way I met Bobby was I founded a group called Gals in Gear, which is really sort of a subset of what she's doing with Innovation Women, targeted at women who are in the screen media industry, because we do also find ourselves often on all-male panels. So we're all trying to deal with the same issue and hopefully push that rock up the hill a little faster. So I'm super happy to have you here. And one of the things I'm always happy to do is chat with you afterwards. You can find me on just about every single platform there is, except for TikTok. I'm not much of a dancer, so I'm not there yet. But feel free to find me on these platforms. And again, you can download the slides anytime you like. So let's get started. And again, don't feel afraid to ask questions if you'd like to, and we'll sort of check in on those throughout the presentation. All right, we're going to cover a couple things today. Amplifying your brand. We're going to talk about BTS, behind the scenes, your secret weapon to getting more amplification. We're going to talk about some tips for networking in a virtual world. And I'm going to wrap up with a couple of my favorite tips if you're going to be on a Zoom call particularly, which is one of the more popular platforms, but really any web conference call or meeting platform, I'm going to give you some tips that you can use to make that a better experience and to project your brand better in a virtual way. Don't forget to take my poll, which is just going to help me sort of understand what your greatest challenge is right now. I see some of you have already logged in. Not enough time for social media. I've got some ideas for you on that. We all have that challenge. It just seems like sort of the last thing on your to-do list when you're running a business or running your career in a business. So I will definitely tackle that, and we're actually going to probably tackle all the questions there. All right, let's get started with amplifying your brand. And by the way, a lot of my photos in this presentation come from a website called Unsplash, which I highly recommend. So if you're somebody who has to make presentations and you want to amplify those presentations and find some really great and sort of more edgy photos, I would strongly suggest checking out Unsplash. It's a free, so far, free resource. I'm sure once they get enough of us hooked, it won't be free anymore. So check it out now. Okay, one of the tips I have is really to focus on your how and your why. And what I mean by that is all of us tend to focus on our what it is that we do. If somebody says, you know, what do you do in your company? You're going to give them the blurb about what your company does. But what people actually care about, and this is part of building your brand, is why you do what you do and how you do what you do. So you think that people hire you or your company because of your knowledge or your skills, your expertise, or perhaps you have some particular equipment that you operate, or maybe some software that you know how to operate, or maybe you have some great personnel. And I'm not saying that that isn't part of it, but really the real reason why people actually hire you is these soft skills issues: attitude, your problem-solving skills, your ability to communicate, your ability to analyze a challenging situation and figure out how to tackle the solution, your ability to galvanize a team, and more important than anything, your good judgment. I often have clients say to me, they send me out to work with a particularly sticky situation because, I'm the quote-unquote grown-up in the room. So they're hiring me for my good judgment. And where does this translate when you're presenting your brand? What it means is your brand promise. That is the experience you're going to consistently deliver to every customer every time. So it's that word experience, the experience they're going to have working with you and your company. It's not about the what, because frankly, there are going to be lots of other companies and people who do exactly what you do. It's how you do it and the sort of the why you do it that you translate, your passion about it. That is your brand promise. So we're going to do a little fun game here. I'll check back with you in a little bit to see how you did on it. But see if you can identify the companies that go with these famous brand promises. And they're actually not very famous because you probably haven't heard them so much because they're sort of inside baseball, but the companies are famous. So one is don't live life without it, and no Googling, okay, no cheating. Don't live life without it. One is powered by service, one of my favorite companies. And this one is a little hard to figure out. Simple, easy enjoyment for every customer at every visit. So see if you can figure out who those are and put it in the feedback from audience box. There's a little drop-down menu for that, and I think you can type words in there. If you can't, just type it in the questions drop-down, okay? And let me know if you figured that out. We'll come back to that later. And the thing that's interesting about all those brand promises is none of them give you any clue what the company does, right? I mean, you really don't have a clue in there, which is why they're a little tricky to figure out. But that's because it's really about focusing on the how and the why. And if you have time, I would strongly recommend watching Simon Sinek's How Great Leaders Inspire Action TED Talk, which I think has had like 10 million views now, maybe more. And talks about Martin Luther King and a number of other great inspirational leaders and companies like Apple and how their brand promise really has translated and why people want to follow them and why they're inspiring. And so that's going to be a really helpful tool for you, maybe even internally in your organization. So when you're blogging, when you're speaking, when you're posting on social media and virtual channels, you want to give people a glimpse of how you operate. And one of my favorite people who does this so well is Ellen McKay. She's a consultant to women leaders and women CEOs, and she has a company called CEO Vision. And one of the things that she does, like in this example, is she, first of all, starts out with kind of a focus on a particular issue or story. And she says, leaders have this particular challenge. And then she goes into a little bit of a personal story that connects with that challenge. And then she asks a series of questions at the end and makes a series of suggestions about some particularly targeted issues to help people drill down into that leadership challenge. So what she's really doing, because I actually know her, is that she's showing you exactly how she operates. She operates a little bit like a psychiatrist in that she asks all these questions when you're working with her as a coach. And then she kind of elicits these sort of deep dives into particular issues and questions about your leadership strategy, and that helps you move forward. And she does it also through anecdotes, personal anecdotes from her career and personal anecdotes from your career. So she's kind of modeling, when she's on LinkedIn, she models how she works with her clients. She also uses a consistent hashtag about leadership that she posts all of her posts with. And there's always lots of commenters, and she always communicates back and forth with each of the commenters. All right, somebody's already guessed one of the answers to the brand promises. Don't live life without it. American Express, I believe you are correct. Well done. I'm sorry I don't know who you are because it doesn't tell me in the little chat, but good job. And I think it's a good example because obviously American Express is really trying to move past being a credit card into sort of an experience card, right? Like they did a big transition in all of their campaigns where they started showing more than just, you know, things you could buy with an American Express card, right? But it was about the experiences you could have with your family and all of that. So I think that is like a classic brand promise focus of a company, and you can do the same thing that these Fortune 100s do. Let's look at another example from a company, the Hilton Hotels, which has been doing a Hilton Clean Stay campaign on, this is from their Twitter feed. So hashtag Hilton Clean Stay. Obviously, lots of people are afraid to check into hotels right now. You know, will it be clean? Will it be safe? And so what they're doing is they're amplifying their brand promise. They're showing you how they go about cleaning that room and what they do and what it's going to look like. And the photograph is from your point of view. Like when you walk up to that door and you see that sticker, you're going to remember that a person with gloved hands put it there after cleaning your room. So they're sort of putting the point of view of the customer into what they're posting in a virtual space. And they're using, again, a consistent hashtag. So these are all great examples of amplifying your brand promise. You're showing your how. Okay, so don't live life without it. American Express, powered by service, one of my favorite companies, Zappos. Does anybody ever buy shoes online? They now sell everything, of course. And by the way, Tony Hsieh, who's the CEO of Zappos, fantastic person to follow on social media. Really great example of a person sort of living their personal brand and making sure the brand promise sort of flows through the whole company. He does great blog posts, really interesting leader to follow. Simple, easy enjoyment for every customer at every visit is McDonald's. Doesn't say a single thing about hamburgers, right? And so that's because they want to be sure they could sell anything to you. The whole point is it's about the experience you have, that it's consistent, whether you have a McDonald's hamburger in, you know, Oklahoma or in Okinawa. It's going to taste the same. It's going to look the same. The packaging will be the same. And the experience is supposed to be, you know, what you expect at a McDonald's, not at a five-star restaurant. The next tip I have for you is reuse, repurpose, recycle. And this gets to that question that was asked, or the vote that you had about not having enough time for social media. Because nobody has enough time to create individual and original content for everything. And so what you want to do is to be able to repurpose. And so when you're going to create content, what you want to start doing is thinking about yourself like a network, and that you have brand channels for your brand to live in many different places. And maybe the anchor for your brand is your website, and that's sort of your core central place where a lot of your content is going to start out. And then it's going to go from there to lots of different locations. And so you want to think about basically syndicating your own content. So what can you take that was maybe going to be a blog post on your website and repurpose it into a talk, and repurpose it into a Facebook post, and repurpose it into an Instagram story or a LinkedIn post or an article or a guest blog post? These are all things you can do. Now this is an example of my personal channel. I try to unify them with color. I try to keep some of the pictures consistent. Not that the picture always has to be the same, but there's sort of a consistent look and feel across all the channels. I use purples and blues and teals in our logo, and so that sort of translates across the different channels. Excuse me. One thing people forget about is your email tag. You know, people often, I get emails from people and doesn't have anything in it. Doesn't have their phone number, doesn't have their website. You know, maybe the second time I communicate with them, it doesn't have any content in there. And what's the point of that? The thing that people most often save is email exchanges. That's how they find you again. Oh, Amy emailed me a couple weeks ago. Let me just dig that up. Why not have content cross-promoted in your own email signature? So I had a link to this, to the sign up for this workshop in my email signature all last week, so that people could be directed to that. If I do a guest post on a blog, I have the link to that. You know, all of these things are ways you can cross-promote that don't take a lot of extra time. So repackage and repurpose. If you're going to write a post on LinkedIn, do a version of it for your blog. Do a smaller version of it for a LinkedIn, for an Instagram story. So what you want to do is create your own multi-platform workflow. And we do this with video production all the time for our clients, where we start out with some longer video, we make tiny little sub-clips for different posts, and then we also have social channels and different content goes to different places. So whatever workflow is going to work for your organization and your channels, you want to build this as sort of a regular workflow. I have it on my big whiteboard right over my desk of all the different channels and where things have to go. You want to also use a content calendar. There's lots of tools, Hootsuite, Buffer. I use Sprout Social, which is wildly overpriced, but I like the interface. So, you know, whatever works for you. And I actually have several different channels because I run Gals and Gear as well as my own personal company. So I have those all connected, and you know, this is the snapshot of whatever I've been posting in July. So some of these are promotions for this webinar. Some of these are promotions for a campaign that we're doing on Gals and Gear called Female Filmmaker Friday. So there's all different kinds of things you can do, but if you have a content calendar, you can copy and paste and sub-clip different portions of different posts, so you don't have to retype everything, and you've got all the hashtags there. And you just push a button and it all posts for you. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't also do organic posting. I absolutely believe that if you're doing something in the moment, it's really great to do an organic post. It just feels natural, feels more authentic. So, but having some scheduled posts that tie to things you know are going to happen, right? Your company is going to be hosting a webinar, you're going to be traveling, God help you someday. You know, those kinds of things are things you can put in your schedule in advance. Great example is Nikki Sun, who is a producer, speaker, blogger, and now she hosts a YouTube channel. She's amazing at cross-promotion of all of her different channels. She uses a very authentic voice to her. It sounds just like speaking to her, very conversational. She uses lots of different hashtags. She amplifies other people and other companies that she works with, so she makes sure she's, you know, throwing out those names and those links, which helps her get amplified through their channels. And, you know, now she's started a whole campaign on TikTok where she's doing like little video tips of how to use your equipment to do webinars and other virtual things from your home, so you can follow her on TikTok. So she's really good at cross-promoting and repurposing and recycling her content in multiple channels. Now, there's a lot of tools that you can use for this, so don't worry, you're not on your own. Adobe Rush, if anybody's worked with Adobe Premiere, this is like the baby version of Adobe Premiere. You don't have to be a video editor to know how to use it. It's very inexpensive. What's nice about Adobe Rush is you can shoot a video with your phone, you can edit it on your phone, you can move into editing it on your laptop or your desktop. It works on all of your platforms, and it will post automatically to all your social platforms when you're done. And it will not give you more than you can handle. So if you're not an expert at like lower thirds graphics, which is, you know, identifying the speaker with titling, it will just show you the basic format. If you get fancier and you get better at that, then it will show you more significant features. So it's got this sort of AI component that's kind of nifty. PicMonkey is a tool I love to use. I have it on my phone. It resizes all my pictures for all my different social channels. So I don't, you know, you never want to see that picture where it's like the person's head is cropped off. It's so embarrassing. Or maybe that person is you because you posted it from, like, you know, you took a picture for Facebook and then it got cropped weirdly for Instagram. So it'll do that all for you, and so you can have it all ready to go, and then you can just post everything to look perfect. And you can even add graphics in PicMonkey, which I like because I like to control the hashtags and the graphics rather than having myself be controlled by the social channel and what fonts and capabilities I have there. I also use Canva. Does anybody use Canva? I think that's a pretty great tool. The free one is nice, but if you go up a step and you do the professional one, then again, it can recraft all your different formats, and it also has great templates for social media, so you don't have to invent them yourself. So like this is a campaign we're doing right now for Gals and Gear on Instagram. It's a quote campaign called Women's Wisdom, and then we have a Women at Work campaign where we're featuring different filmmakers. And, you know, these are all built in, you know, I just adapted some of the templates they already had. And so it's very nifty, easy to do. Once you've created a couple, you'll be on your way. All right, I would love to get a couple of questions. I know you guys are absorbing a lot of information, but let's see if we can roll with a question or two about social media. Bobby, I know you've got a couple maybe that have already come in advance.
Yep, so I definitely want to remind everybody that you can ask a question just by typing it into the tab there. And we have, let's see here, questions from the audience. You know what? I cannot see any questions right now.
Well, I know one question I get a lot, Bobby, about social channels, and that is, how do I know what is the right social media platform for my business? Because there are so many different channels to be in. And, you know, I would just say to people, don't stress out. You don't have to be on 54 platforms, but you do want to be where your customers are, right? So if your customers are skewing younger, you're going to want to be on Instagram. If your customers are professionals and C-suite people, you want to be on LinkedIn. If your customers are, you know, baby boomers, you're going to want to be on Facebook. And maybe you're going to want to be in all three places, but with different kinds of tweaks on your content. What's a good source for tips for making Instagram videos, total beginners to video? I would totally recommend going to Nikki Sun's YouTube channel, Tech Nikki Speaking, which is so hilarious. What a great name. T-E-C-H, Tech Nikki, N-I-C-K-I, Speaking, all one word, Tech Nikki Speaking. She has a YouTube channel. She has all kinds of tips for beginners on making videos and lots of really great tips on like equipment that's not going to be too pricey for you, that's kind of prosumer equipment or things you can buy on Amazon. She's really good with all kinds of little tips, so that's where I would start. And she has a great Instagram channel as well, also Tech Nikki Speaking, so check her out. And she'll also be able to help you link to other places. She's really good about promoting other sources and resources on different kinds of videos.
We got a whole bunch of questions in here. So let's start off with, we have one person who is saying content calendar. How does it work? Is the post and the picture stored?
Yes, is the answer. So you upload pictures. You upload pictures, and then the post is stored in the calendar, and then you can go into that post and click edit, and you could just copy and paste it into a different post. In my content calendar, I could select all of my different platforms simultaneously if I wanted to. I generally don't do that because, unfortunately, the way the platforms evolved was separately, and so if you're trying to call out and name somebody, their Facebook name might be different than their Instagram name, like the @ whatever it is, you know. So like Innovation Women is great because they actually got the same name on Instagram and Facebook, but not everybody does. So I often will just copy and paste, and then I can just turn it into a slightly different one and select that that social platform. But I'm basically copying and pasting the same content, and once I've uploaded the image, it's there as a resource for me for multiple posts.
All right, we have a couple of questions here that are related. So we have a couple of questions that are basically asking, how do you get started if you're totally new to social media? And another question is asking, what do you recommend people start with? For example, we may all know about Instagram and Facebook, but what platform yields the best starting point?
Right. Well, first of all, you can't be on social media without a website or somewhere to direct them to. So obviously you've got to have a web home first and foremost. And I think it's great to have blog content on there because then you can post different content that's longer form if you have more to say about things. And then those Instagram or Facebook posts kind of direct people to your website, which then can capture those people as potential customers. So I think you got to anchor it with a website. I think Facebook is still the gorilla in the room, as many people hate it and have issues and what have you. And I think somebody also said, you know, my customers are mostly women 55 to 70. Absolutely, Facebook would be your platform. There's a lot of older women on Facebook for sure. So, but I would say Facebook for sure. and then you could add to that Instagram, which is now owned by Facebook. It's super easy to cross promote those two platforms. It depends. If you really are trying to go after younger people, TikTok is very hot right now, so it might be fun to post a few short videos to TikTok. But I would definitely start with Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn just professionally. I think it's really important to have a LinkedIn profile that reflects you professionally and your company professionally.
Great. We have a couple of other questions that are related. One person is asking, what is the best platform for hosting your blog? And another person is asking if you prefer WordPress or Medium or some other one for your blog.
Yeah, well, you know, the answer is whatever you started your blog on is your favorite platform, because, you know, when I first started my blog, there really only was WordPress, so that's just what I've stuck with. And so, you know, I think it's just whatever you're comfortable with. There's so many different overlays, so, you know, ways you can do different packages. So I don't think you have to worry too much about whichever platform, just you could research that and come up with 100 of them. I think the key is it easy for you to adapt quickly and turn it into whatever you want? And they're coming up with new plugins all the time for really cool layouts and templates, so you don't have to be creative in order to come up with a really good look. I see somebody's having trouble finding Technicky Speaking on YouTube. I would just Google Technicky Speaking and the word YouTube, and you'll find her. I mean, I just did it, and I got right to her YouTube channel. So
maybe
Technicky
Nikki
is like all one speak. No, it's just. I mean, can I upload this link somewhere?
We would have to tell
Technicky,
people.
all one word. Technicky is all one word, and then speaking is a separate word.
And Nikki is spelled
Technicki, but it's all one word, Technicky, and then speaking is a separate word. But if you Google it, you'll get right there, I promise you.
All right. And our next question is podcasting considered social media? I'm new to podcasting, only 2 episodes in. How should I be using podcasting in my nonprofit?
Oh my gosh. Well, you and I will just have to have a whole separate conversation about podcasting, because yes, it is social media. It's amazing. I'm actually doing a Gals and Gear podcast right now. We have 27 women lined up to be part of that. You know, you should be on every platform. So, you know, you can be on the Apple podcast platform, of course. But you also want to be in all the other possible platforms. You know, there's also one for, what's the format for Android? I forget it right now. But, you know, there's so many different podcast platforms. And then you can also host it on your website, or you could host it on another website that's like related to your content but has higher volume than your website. So, for example, our podcast is probably going to be hosted by Creative Cow, which has a big audience for the kind of technical people that we're interested in reaching, and so they may be one of our co-hosts, so to speak. Pocket Cast is also a great app that just for podcasts generally, because you can actually send podcasts to people and sub-clip parts of podcasts and send them out to people. So I'd highly recommend using that, because even as the producer of the podcast, if you can, it can just be an easy way for you to share little sub-clips of podcasts. So yes, I absolutely think podcasting is key and a great cross-promotion for your nonprofit. Make sure that you get your audio transcribed, and there's lots of AI tools out there to do it. Rev.com, rev.com is one of the best, so that search engines can find the content, because they tend to look for the transcription. Okay.
All right.
And we got to move on. I know there are a lot of other questions.
Yeah. And maybe just one more, then move on to you've got a whole list of final tips, right?
We're way before final tips. We got lots of other things to do. We're going to talk about BTS and some other things. So let me just hit a couple of these quickly, Bobby, because I can see them here. Facebook for business versus Facebook for personal. I just try to keep it clear, the lanes. I have a Facebook page that I use called Tell a Better Story. That's for my professional stuff. And my personal Facebook is my personal Facebook. I don't friend people I don't actually know, but some people do. So it depends on what business you're in. If you were a realtor, I would say you got your social Facebook is your business Facebook. Certain kinds of businesses, it's really going to kind of mishmash together. So you just have to see what works for you. In terms of writing a book, if it's a business audience, you definitely want to be promoting it on LinkedIn for sure, because that's definitely targeting a business audience. And somebody mentioned reposting other work versus original work. Yeah, you got to be super careful about copyright. You don't really have the right to repost other people's things. People do in personal channels. That's why I always use Unsplash and put a photo credit, because I really don't want to, if it's not my picture, I don't want to take credit for it, and I don't want to get sued. All right, let's talk a little bit about, one other person, Adobe Rush interface. Yes, it interfaces with iOS, and yes, it's available without buying the entire Creative Cloud. Like, you don't have to buy the whole professional suite. There's some subset that you can buy for Rush. All right, BTS means behind the scenes, and what that is just giving people that sneak peek into your how. Okay, so we talked about your how and why that's more important than your what. And it gives people a sense of how you work, who you are, behind the scenes. So it's something that you always want to take photos of, which I'm really bad at. I hardly ever take pictures of myself while I'm working. But it's really, really useful. So, one colleague of mine who has a PR firm, she's always taking pictures of her clients, when they're being featured on television or doing some kind of activity, and then she posts it and they post it. And there's a lot of cross promotion of that. This other picture is another friend of mine who's amazing, and she does a lot of training videos. Valentina V, she just had a whole COVID series that she posted on TikTok that got a huge following, and she cross promoted that on Instagram. And they were all sort of behind the scenes, how she set everything up to shoot these little tiny TikTok videos. So that sort of gets to her capabilities and strength as a director and producer by showing her technical skills. And she shot them all in fast forward, which you can do with your phone, by the way, hyperlapse. I'm a big fan of shooting everything in that. So, there's just little things you can do to think, again, like a network of producing your own content for your different channels. And so the making of whatever it is you're doing, even if it's something boring, like I shot one time just all the papers on the floor of my office when I was organizing for this big multi-channel production for a client, and it was all the different scripts and storyboards and crew schedules and all this stuff. And, it was just basically papers on the floor of my office, but it kind of gave people a window into how I'm organizing this five crew shoot that we were about to do. So anything you can do to give people a window into how you work is really great for social media. And there's lots of tools. I'm not going to go into all details on this stuff, but you'll be able to get the slide deck and link to all these things. If you want to get fancy with your phone and make it float, there's all kinds of little gimbals you can buy. I'm a big fan of the Gorilla Pod you can see in the upper right, because I can clip my camera to anything. It could be clipped to a branch of a tree or to my computer or whatever I want. Audio is super important. If people can't hear you in your little video clips, then they're going to shut them down. So there's lots of little low budget, and these are low budget in our world of professional production, because we spend thousands on microphones, but a couple $100 will get you the Ceramonic Blink 500. I love that, because you can set it up to your computer, or you can just link it to your cell phone. Now, in the links, I gave you a fun link to Darlene Newman. She has a show on PBS and Amazon Prime called Travels with Darlene. And I hooked her up with an Insta360 camera, and she, believe it or not, jumped off the highest tower in Macau with this camera strapped to her. So you can watch that crazy footage, because we can't watch it here. And then what she did is so this is BTS of her jump, right? Of somebody taking a video of her jumping, making the video, and then she posted on her social media the footage of her the actual 360 camera, and that helped her promote that upcoming episode. So that's an extreme version. I know that nobody here is going to be crazy enough to jump off the highest tower in Macau, but my point is just come up with something that has a little bit of a story to it. You know, in Darlie's case, she's willing to do whatever it takes to make her travel shows interesting for the viewer. And so her little BTS moment there is kind of giving you a window into how she likes to tell her stories. All right, I know you guys have more questions, so keep them coming. Somebody did ask a question that I was a little confused by. What did you say you are a big fan of shooting in? I'm not sure what that means. Like, what format am I shooting in? I'm not sure. If you can clarify, that would be helpful, because I want to be helpful to you, but I'm not quite sure what you're saying. Virtual networking is super hard because you're not going to like have the person's business card and have met them at a bar at a conference or something. So you have to be a little more intentional about it and have kind of a goals plan. You want to target millennials, or you want to amplify diverse voices, or whatever your sort of top 3 goals are. You want to have them sort of at the top of your goal sheet, and then tactical things you're going to do those kind of networking. You're going to share certain things, you're going to create that routine with your calendar, and then you're going to engage with people. And when I mean engage, I don't just mean typing a quick comment, but then maybe connecting to them. Whether it's through Facebook message, Instagram has a message, all these apps have message tools, so you can have a private conversation with somebody, and then if it seems like somebody that you want to stay connected to, then you can connect to them through, email and all of that stuff. I generally try to connect to people eventually on LinkedIn, because that way, if they change jobs or change phone numbers or change emails, I still sort of have them in my cloud Rolodex, so to speak. So I try to make a point of following people in LinkedIn and then connecting to them there. You can follow certain hashtags and accounts. If there's people, sometimes if I'm targeting a particular type of business, then I want to start listening to other businesses in that space, so I understand the lingo, I understand the conversations, and I can have a better chance at contributing to those conversations. And when you're doing your targeted follow-ups, like I said, connect to them, add their contacts to your email address list so that you can follow up through email. That's really still the best way to follow up with people and schedule a one-on-one. Couple final tips for you on web calls, that we're all, doing these fabulous web calls, right? And we're just like always online. I feel like I get zoomed out by Friday. But a couple tips for you to look and feel better when you're on camera. Solids. I'm a big fan of wearing solids when you're on camera, because I think there's just a lot of confusion and a lot of bad data. Unfortunately, Zoom in particular tends to crush the data rate depending on the time of day of your meeting. So Monday at 9 o'clock, you're going to look really pixelated. So I am a big fan of wearing solids. You can see me on the top left there, and my colleague Adrienne. We were co-hosting this webinar, and she's wearing solids as well. The woman in the lower left, I think, can get away with this lovely pattern. It looks good on her, but the background was a little busy. So I think you have to think about your foreground image, you, and your background image. So here's backgrounds. I don't have a virtual background. I just have my office, but it has a lot of depth, and I've cleared things out of the way. So I just have a couple of my awards, a couple of pictures, a couple of books, and all the other groovy stuff you can't see on camera. This is Adrusha Apana. She's a big social media personality. We were having a web call, and she just had a very beautifully sort of color graded blank wall behind her. She's beautiful, so she looks good against anything. What you don't want to do is the up the nose shot. And unfortunately, if you own a Dell laptop, that's exactly the shot you're going to have. So you're going to have to like wrangle your laptop up on books or something and get yourself an external keyboard, because that's the up the nose shot, and it always looks bad. The other thing I would suggest is, if you want to set up an external camera, make sure that it's at eye level or slightly above. This is from one of my friends who's a big techie, so he set up a DSLR camera. You might have an old DSLR hanging around the house, and you could use it, but you could use an old video camera that you have hanging around the house. It's super easy to hook that up to your computer, and there's all kinds of online how-tos that you can find to do that, but it's super easy. Or you could just buy a webcam. I think Amazon finally is, has them back in stock. So let's see, audio. I gave you a couple more examples of headsets that you could get. Super cheap microphones, or if you're a podcaster, there's a couple of podcaster microphones that I like. I use the Blue Snowball, which is pretty affordable at $69. And I also have the MPOW headset, which is only $32. So, something that makes you sound good, because sound is critical. People will drop out if they can't hear you properly. The content calendar platform I use, by the way, somebody mentioned that, is Sprout Social, which, as I said, is a little pricey. Hootsuite is cheaper, but I just don't like the interface, so that's just me. But lighting is important. I can't tell you how many people I see on web calls, and it's like, getting into evening, and they look like they're in the, witness protection program, because like the light is fading behind them, and there's no light on their face. There's lots and lots of things you can buy. I gave you a few examples here. None of them are expensive. I actually have been using this little, kind of my secret weapon is the Verilux Happy Light, which was actually designed for people with seasonal affective disorder, which I often get when I'm sitting in a dark editing room for months at a time working on productions. And so it's just like a little tiny light, but it's the same color temperature as the sun. So I actually have one of those on my desk, and I can just bounce it against the wall, and that gives me great light. What do you do when you work for a company in a senior role but want to have personal experiences to promote yourself? Yes, this is a big challenge that I'm going to talk about in a sec. So hang on with that. It's a great question. A couple more Zoom tips. If you're on Zoom, make sure you test your audio before you enter the room. There's a way you can just right-click on the little picture of the microphone. If you're going to share anything that's high resolution, like I do a lot of video clip sharing in these things, you have to enable HD. That's in the video drop-down tab. Also, if your company is doing Zoom recordings on a regular basis, don't just rely on the cloud recording, which is great, but have a second person on the call record to make a local record. It'll be about 10 times higher quality, and you'll get it about 3 days sooner. I'm not a fan of green screen, just because when you're doing the green screen, but I understand why people do it, because they want to not show their backgrounds. Just remember, it's running extra data through a sort of mini switcher on the internet, and so as a result, it's crushing the data rate of your personal image, which is why you look sometimes like you're kind of swimming in front of that background, and you're hitching back and forth. Bobby, do you want to pull up some of these questions? There's so many great ones.
Yeah, we do have a whole bunch of questions. One of the questions we have here is, can you give an example of being targeted while virtual networking?
Good example. Okay. So one thing I like to do is, let's say I'm working with a client in a particular sector. Like I just started working last year. Our company started producing a whole lot of videos and content for an association that's in the kind of engineering space. So now I'm thinking, well, we have a lot of experience in that, so I should be going after some other organizations that are in the similar related manufacturing engineering space. I can start looking up those companies in the search engine of my LinkedIn, and you just use the drop-down menu of search, and instead of searching for people, you can search for companies, and I can see I might actually already be connected to 5 people who are connected to organizations, and I can then get either introductions to those people if I'm only a second degree, or if I'm a first degree, then I can just message them and say, hey, I see we're connected, and I've just been doing XYZ work for this organization. Would you like to set up a meeting to talk about how we can help you with your social media content? So you can be really targeted on LinkedIn, and it's an amazing database. So that's an example. Or, for example, if you're in a conversation on a Facebook channel about some issue that's related to your professional work, do a sidebar conversation in message with the person that seems most aligned with something you could be helping them with. or vice versa. They could be helping you with something, and set up a sidebar conversation and then turn that into a phone call. So there's ways you can do it, but there have to be these little threads, if you will, from getting from social media to the real world.
Gotcha. We did have someone who was asking again for the YouTuber you were recommending, Technicki, I believe.
Technicki, Technicki, all one word, and then speaking is the second word. Or just look up Technicki speaking on
we
on
also
Google.
want to know what the content calendar platform is you use.
As I mentioned, Sprout Social. Yeah, Sprout Social.
Are videos essential in this day and age?
150%. Video is going to be pushed up in every algorithm to the top. And I'll give you an example. I've been doing a little experiment on my Instagram feed, my personal Instagram. And I'm a violinist, just for fun on the side, but I'm pretty good. I play with an orchestra when we actually can have rehearsals. So I posted a little video clip of me playing the Ashokan Melody from Ken Burns' Civil War series. I posted that on a Sunday afternoon at about 4:30 in the afternoon when nobody's usually on social media. I've had like 73 views already. Probably 60 of them were in the first hour. So it obviously showed up, and lots of conversations have come from that, etc. So you definitely are going to get more shares and more views if you post video.
All right, and I think we have some clarification on the one question about what you were a big fan of shooting in, and I think it was a question regarding camera or format.
I see. Well, I tend to shoot everything in 4K because my philosophy is this syndication idea. So, and even if I'm shooting with my cell phone, I want to shoot it in 4K because it's going to be the highest quality, and I can always cut it up into smaller things and compress it into smaller sized videos. So I'd rather start with a higher quality. Now, if you know for sure this is just going to be a little clip you're going to put on Facebook, you don't have to do that. You can select 1080 on your phone. It'll be less annoying to upload. It'll take less time, and it'll be less compressed looking when it's on the platform. So, that's fine for a couple short things. But if you're producing longer content and then you're going to chop it up into little pieces, you should start with 4K, I think, because then you have the highest quality.
We also have a request for you to repeat the name of the women's group or program you're starting. You mentioned at the beginning of the presentation.
Sure. Yeah, it's #GalsNGear, GalsNGear. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and on the web at galsandgear.tv. You can see some of the programs that we've done to try to promote women in the screen media industry who are in technical jobs like engineers and camera operators and sound designers and animators. It's a pretty cool bunch of ladies.
All right. We also have a request on how can you Facebook Live and Instagram Live at the same time without making it obvious you're looking at two video cameras.
I wouldn't do it both at the same time, to be perfectly frank. I mean, you could, now there's a couple things you could do. You can record and then upload later. It's not going to push you up as high in the algorithm as if you do them separately to their own network, because they don't like to, they're like, even though they're owned now by one company, they're kind of rivals, if you will. So it's better to natively post whenever you can when you're posting video. Somebody has a question about backdrops, and I want to answer that because I just got my Westcott backdrop, WESTCOTT. They have a little backdrop. I think all the green screen ones were sold out for a while, but they probably have them now. I just have a gray one, and it's just got these little pop-up kind of background stand, and you can hang backgrounds of different colors. And also Savage, SAVAGE, also makes a backdrop kit. And those are, I guess, probably the cheapest ones that you can get.
I have a really nice quality one from Remote Nation, and
there
so
you go.
it's
there's so many.
Comes in a beautiful bag, and it's like recycled felt and has wooden feet and everything. Everybody asks me about it all the time.
Short videos, I'm going to wrap up with that because this is such a good question, Bobby, about like if you're new to video, what are some short videos? And, you know, again, I think anything you can show that's behind the scenes. I mean, it could be you typing madly to make a deadline for some report, or it could be you, you know, in your yard, you know, trying to be socially distant with your neighbor, or it could, you know, it could be you taking a walk because you're, you know, going so stark raving mad in your work from home. I mean, just little snippets of things that are about you. And then you can also deliver some other content about what it is you're working on or what it is you're doing. People just want to see you and know you as a person. And so I think that's really the best way to deliver little short video clips. And then once we get back out in the real world, you can show longer videos of things you're actually doing.
Great, thank you.
I just want to wrap up with just some final tips. I mean, again, focusing on your how and your why is really important as opposed to your what. People are bored with what. So how you go about it. I mean, think about all the people who do, you know, cooking shows, right? It's really the how and the why. If anybody's seen Padma Lakshmi's new show, which I just love, it's really about, you know, why people cook the dishes they do. You know, it's really about sort of the heart and soul of ethnic cooking and immigrant cooking throughout America, called Taste the Nation. Highly recommend. And so what makes that show so great is it's not like I'm going to learn exactly how to make every recipe, but it also kind of shows me the behind the scenes and the why these different communities cook the way they do, what the lineage is of those wonderful recipes. Shoot and share some BTS photos or videos. Think about your content as a big bucket of content that you can chop up into little pieces instead of trying to think of like, oh my God, I have to produce like 15,000 different social media channels. It's just too much. Try to build some time into your calendar to post and to engage. You know, speak with your own authentic voice. Especially for that person who works in a company, you want to still build your own exclusive voice in these social channels, okay? And you want to be able to build your own personal brand that also promotes your professional self, right? And you have to be careful about it because there have been some lawsuits about, you know, does your employer own your LinkedIn connections and all this kind of stuff. So I think you have to be really careful to make sure that you're sort of creating a persona that you can basically port from one job to another, right? And this is something I'm noticing a lot with people's LinkedIn titles now. Instead of putting their actual job title, it's more generic. I mean, I've had a pretty generic title for a long time, digital content creator or digital storyteller, you know, because that can apply to any job I'm doing with any group. So I think you need to do the same thing. You need to think of yourself as a brand, your personal brand, and what are you going to do in those spaces to promote that. And then just make sure you have the right audio. Audio and lighting is so important, and not the up-the-nose shot, you know, for these web things that we always have to do. I have a little sticky over my camera that has a little smiley face because, you know, you just sound better when you're smiling. So I think it's really important whether or not people can see you to smile while you're doing it. The link to the slides, somebody asked, is right there at the bottom of this. It's amydelouise.com/slide-decks, plural. And you can get access to these slides. So all those links will be good and you won't be surfing around the internet trying to find them. And I just really appreciate how active you've been with your questions. I know it's hard that I can't see you and talk to each and every one of you in person. So I really appreciate your time and being part of this. And Bobby's just created such an amazing organization. I really, really love it. And I'm so glad that it exists in this world, Bobby.
Oh, well, thank you, Amy, for joining us. And thank you all for joining us at home. Don't forget to leave us feedback and have a good day. Thanks again.